Oh my goodness. Hello. I have no idea how to do this. All right. Hi, everyone. This is my very first Instagram Live. And let's see if Michelle is here. How do I do that? Here she is. Waiting for Priv to Prague. Connecting. Hello.
Hi, it's your first live ever?
Yes.
Wow, man. Heavy.
Never done it. I've never done it. So that just shows you how much I've been looking forward to this.
I appreciate that, girl. I really appreciate that.
How are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
I'm good. I'm safe. I'm healthy. That's kind of all you could ask for right now.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
I'm so excited to be talking about this with you, to just have this conversation with you. I've been really looking forward to it ever since you reached out to me.
Yeah.
Not just because I really admire what you and Melissa have been doing for the last few years, but just this time and this climate right now, as many of these conversations as we can be having, as much as possible, we should be. And so thank you.
Yeah, definitely. The conversation is what needs to happen.
Yeah.
The conversation is what is the exact thing that hasn't been happening in our country. I mean, I grew up with people that still say that their parents have literally taught them to not talk about race.
Yeah. I was one of those people. I mean,
Mm,
it was, you don't talk about religion, politics, and I think race was kind of wrapped up in the politics of it all in my family, even though
right.
it had nothing to do with politics. I mean, people make it about politics, but yeah, I was in one of those families. Um,
Interesting. So
yeah,
then how did you end up here? What happened in your life? Was there any kind of defining moment where you said, I
yeah,
have to talk about this?
and it was recent. And I mean, also, I want people to know first. I want people to know your story as well, just to give my followers, if they don't know who you are, your background, and then I want to answer your question because I feel like I'll get long-winded. um, but for anyone that doesn't know Michelle and Melissa's page, From Privilege to Progress, I don't know if everyone remembers. It was in 2018, right?
2018.
Um, there were two men that were arrested at a Starbucks for doing nothing. And I don't know if you want to tell your story, but
Yeah,
it's important for people who don't already know it to hear it.
definitely. Let me adjust this. I'm visiting my man right now in Texas, and his cute little apartment, his lighting is like, um, so yeah, that was worse, right? Let me go back. So um, so yeah, for anyone that doesn't know, I think a lot of people heard that story. We got
Yeah,
messages from Australia because everybody goes to Starbucks.
yeah,
So it's interesting now because I feel like now that was divine intervention. So my just a little bit of background about myself. My great grandfather was an activist in Africa. So I'm first generation Ghanaian American. My great grandfather was one of the main liberators of Ghana from England. He went to jail
wow.
for 7 years for believing in what in our the rights for our tribe. He was a chief linguist for our tribe's king. My uncle was the president of Ghana for 2 terms. My grandpa was the chief. My uncle are chief. My uncles are still in the government. So activism is just in my blood. But I didn't realize that. I didn't even know my full family history until after all this unfolded.
Hmm.
So I had lived in Philadelphia for 5 years before I went to that Starbucks, and I actually only had been there one other time, but I would purposefully walk an additional 4 blocks past that location because it's in a very gentrified part of the city.
Hmm.
Philadelphia is a very black city, but that specific neighborhood is like 70 some percent white. And it's designed that way. It's one of the richest
Of
parts of
course.
Philly. It's beautiful, but it's very segregated. So I didn't like going to that Starbucks because I was the only Black person the last time that I went there. I don't know what it was about this day. Something told me to go back to this Starbucks.
Wow.
I don't know what it would have been. I walk in there, same scene. I'm the only Black woman in there. And I was like, well, I'm already here. I'm not going to be a weirdo and walk out. So I get my coffee, I sit down, I'm doing whatever. I'm there for about 45 minutes, and these two Black guys walk in, super cute, caramel, chocolate, the one with the green jacket with the beard. I was like, yes, so adorable. So I'm watching them, and also when you're the only one and someone else walks in, you take notice.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, oh, now there's more of me. I felt more comfortable. They walk up to the barista. They say, can we use the bathroom? She said, no, it's for paying customers only. They said, okay. They sat down. That was it. That was it.
Which, by the way, I've done that a million times. I've done that so many times.
Right. And I don't do that because sometimes when you're a person of color, you police your own body. You don't want to draw attention to yourself. So I was like, I don't like doing that. And it's funny because when other people do it, I'm like, brave. I'm like, I'm like, I would never think to. Sometimes I buy things that I don't even need just to use the bathroom.
Yeah.
So I saw her walking away and she started like mouthing something to herself. And the barista, she just walked, and she was, I don't know why, but I looked at her. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but my initial gut reaction said, I think she just said something racist. I don't know why. I couldn't hear her. I couldn't read her lips. But when we have those moments, it's so important to check ourselves. And I said, Michelle, now you're being prejudiced. You have no idea what she said. How do you know that she didn't forget some simple syrup in the back? You need to mind your own business. And I was literally having a conversation with myself in my head to say, why are you so focused on this woman? Like, why can't you just leave her alone? So I put my head back down. I continue working. 5 minutes later, the cops show up. And nothing had happened. So I'm thinking that they're responding to something earlier in the day, maybe even the day before. I'm trying to eavesdrop because I'm trying to get the dirt. I'm like, oh, some drama. I'm trying to listen in. So I'm listening in, and I heard her lie. And I heard her say, those two guys in the corner are refusing to leave. And I immediately said, I bet what she said was racist, because why else was my body feeling like I didn't trust her?
Your gut doesn't lie.
Your gut doesn't lie. People, ladies especially, our gut doesn't lie.
Yeah.
So what made me more scared is that the cops didn't ask any follow-up questions. There was no investigation. There was no, what did they do? They were just like, oh, those two? And so I started getting a little sweaty. I remember looking at my palms and being like, what's going to happen? Like, I used to have panic attacks. So my fingers would start to get tingly. And I remember doing this, being like, something's going to happen. And I remember looking at them, and they looked at me, and we both were like looking at the cops to be like, what's going on? Something's happening, because they started walking toward them. So the three of us were just like, what is happening? So they beeline for these guys. 2 turned to 4, turned to 6, turned to 8 police officers.
8 police officers.
8 police officers for 2 guys who didn't buy a coffee. So I stood up, and what was frustrating to me is that the guy next to me, the white guy next to me, was there for the same amount of time I was there. He didn't buy a coffee. I saw a white girl come in mid-jog, use the bathroom. I remember she was wearing purple headphones. And I remember thinking to myself, I wonder if she works here, that she knows the code, because we have codes at our bathrooms in Philly. Because homeless people go in there. It's interesting that the homeless people don't get arrested as quickly as the Black people not buying. Yep. But anyways,
that's a really good point,
right? And they have codes because they would do things in the bathroom that they weren't supposed to do. So I remember thinking to myself, maybe she works here. Maybe she's here so often that they just give her the code and she just knows it, so they just let her use the bathroom. I was so frustrated, and I remember thinking to myself, okay, I know I'm going to do something, but what am I going to do? Because it was clear to me no one else was paying attention. No one else was going to do anything, say anything, nothing. I remember actually a white guy sitting next to them who actually got up and walked to the other side of the Starbucks, and I was like, you motherfucker. I was like, what? Are you serious?
As if it was like inconveniencing his day.
Right. And as I think about him randomly, every time I tell the story, I think about him, and I wonder how he feels now. I wonder what, if anything, if his life was changed in that moment. I hope it was,
Yeah.
because I know everyone there, their life was changed. So I got up the courage. I was actually physically sweating. Like my armpits were actually literally, I remember my armpits being like wet because I was terrified. I'm like, I'm about to go approach the cops who are arresting Black people for not buying a coffee, and I'm a Black person.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to happen to me? But in that moment, I said to myself, these are my brothers. These are like, how do I know if the slave trade didn't happen, they wouldn't be my neighbors or my friends or my family in Africa? Like literally that's just how I feel. So I got up, I approached the cop, and I said, well, one of the 8. And I said, why are you doing this? And he told me to go ask the barista, which I thought was a very interesting response. Like, no accountability, responsibility to explain
No.
why I have to do this. Go ask the barista. Is that how this works? Is she your boss? Like, she just tells you what
So
to do?
expensive for someone that you pay his paychecks.
Right. Go
You
ask the
pay
barista.
taxes that fund his paychecks.
Yep. So I said, oh, okay. Because that's not de-escalating the situation. You were telling me that it's okay for me to go and confront someone, which I did. So I said, all right. I walked up to the barista and I said, why'd you call the cops? Melissa, her chest and her face just immediately flushed red. Like it was like fire.
Wow.
She kind of stuttered and she was like, oh, I really can't say, in a very fake damsel in distress type of voice. Kind of like Amy Cooper. Remember when Amy Cooper called
Yep.
it the
You
same thing?
change that tone of voice and you're putting on an act.
You're putting on an act. So I was like, oh, I can say I watched the entire thing happen from beginning to end. And I said, did you feel like your life was in danger? And she ignored me and she walked down the Starbucks aisle. So I followed her and I asked her, I was like, did you feel like you were being threatened? And she completely ignored me. She wouldn't even look at me. So I took a step back. I yelled at her. I said, you're a fucking coward. Went back to my table. I'm packing up all my stuff. And all these white women staring at me. And I remember one of the girls I'm friends with now, Jody, I remember her lips started quivering. And I was like, oh my God, if she cries, I'm going to cry. I looked to my right, and this white girl was like looking at me, kind of like, okay, well, what are we going to do now? So I'm packing up my stuff, and she starts packing up her stuff too. Like, yeah, like I'm going to leave too. And the only other person that day in the Starbucks to address the Starbucks was my partner, Melissa. The only other person. She stood up. We made eye contact from across the Starbucks. And she says something along the lines of, I was just here. I come here. I sit here for hours. I don't buy coffee. No one ever asks me to leave, and you know why. So we basically staged a walkout, and I remember I asked the cops again, do you realize that you're arresting 2 dudes for not buying a coffee? And one of them was like, well, we weren't being disrespectful, were we? And I said, you're arresting 2 dudes for not buying a coffee. And they turned their backs to me. They literally turned around and put their backs to me. And I was like, I'm losing my mind.
But you
like,
you weren't though.
Right. Watch them be handcuffed behind their back, escorted into a cop car. I remember like doing one of these at them because I couldn't get them out, but I was like, I see you.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. They were taken to the police station. They were there for like 12 hours. And it went viral. And I didn't have Twitter or Facebook at the time. But people were like texting me and calling me, hey, Michelle, the thing that you told me about is blowing up.
Right, and you can hear your voice in the video.
Right. And I didn't know. I mean, when they were censoring Melissa, so all the media was like hounding Melissa, hounding her, trying to get her interviews. And I saw it happening and I wasn't going to say anything. But to be honest, I was like, typical. They're censoring the white person when I knew no one would have known what was going on had I not said anything. So fortunately, she tracked me down. So she literally stalked me. She found me somehow, tracked me down, and she was like, we need to meet. Everyone's approaching me. You're the one that said something. This is just ridiculous. We met up the next Monday and we were like, what are we going to do? Now that the world is paying attention to what racism actually can look like today, what are we going to do about it? And literally it's continuing that conversation for everyone to address their own biases. You know, people just didn't, if we hadn't said anything, no one in that Starbucks would have realized that they were witnessing a blatant act of racial discrimination happening right in front of their faces.
Yep.
Everyone watching this live right now, you have probably seen something like this, but you didn't quite recognize it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, you know, and then it was kind of cool because people started waking up, and after that you saw a string of videos of white people calling the cops on black people for living their lives. It was the girl selling water, the boy mowing the lawn, another guy moving into his apartment, which I don't even know what that call would possibly sound like. Like, there's a guy furnishing an apartment for free. Like, what? Like, what? Like, how is that a 911 call? Um, you know, and 2 years later, we're still seeing it. We're seeing the Amy Coopers. We're still seeing these things happening, but at least people are a bit more aware.
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to create, um, just this collective consciousness that we have to keep having these conversations. We have to talk to one another, because racism is not going to end unless we have these conversations. It's just not going to happen. Racism, I'm going to say, it's not a black problem.
No.
Racism was created by white people hundreds of years ago. It's unfortunate that we are here, but these are the cards that we were dealt. And if we don't do anything about it, what message are we sending out to the world?
Yep. It's just going to stay the same as it has for the past 500 years.
Literally.
And the irony about being an anti-racist is that we have to acknowledge, I think, our races and acknowledge that it's a white person problem and that there is nothing wrong with the black community or black people at all. It is something everyone has to look inside themselves as a white person to amend, to change.
And that, you know, it's that shame and that guilt. And again, the very strategic, I mean, let's be honest, racism is smart.
Yeah.
It is.
And it's adaptable.
Very.
It is really like scarily malignant.
Yes, it is very, very easy. It is, I mean, race isn't even real.
No.
It's not even real. Like, do you think a zebra looks at another zebra and they're like, yeah, man, that zebra, I don't know, he's got too many stripes. I don't know about him. No. Like, there hasn't been one human being on this face of this planet who's ever going to be identical to me or you for the rest of humanity or from the beginning of humanity.
Right.
That's the beauty of us.
Yeah.
But when you can, I mean, like, literally, it was created for control and for wealth. And it's the oldest trick in the book. It's divide and conquer. Divide and conquer.
It's created for self-interest and power.
That's it. And we're just trying to get people to understand that we all have biases. Listen, when I see a white guy walking down the street that's bald with tattoos, I get worried that he's in the KKK.
Right. Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I have to talk to myself and be like, Michelle, what's wrong with you? You don't know. Actually, I don't know if my friend's watching. My friend Nick, he literally fits that description, and he's like one of the coolest guys ever, and like only dates black girls. So like, you're like, you know, you realize that that's a bias that you have from the media portraying what a white supremacist looks like.
Yeah.
And you have to talk to yourself and have those really tough but radically honest conversations and say, where does this thought come from? Why do I believe this? Why is this happening? Because it's not natural for us. It's not like, I mean, when I'm watching a white person experience white fragility, I'm like, that's also trauma. Like look at your reaction, your physical reaction. I mean, you're uncomfortable right now. Mm-hmm. That's not normal.
No, none of
we shouldn't. Yeah, you know, and other people from other countries look at us and they're like, what's going on over there? Because we're very uniquely racist. We're very uniquely, well, South America, Central America, but America, you know, North America, we're not ready to give it up. We're not ready to give up the profiting off of black bodies, which is why they tell you don't talk about race. What do you mean don't talk about race? Because what's been going on since 1619 is the same thing that's going on now. It just looks different. My boyfriend says it's they've innovated it. They've innovated racism.
Absolutely. It just redefines itself every time it has to. When like one step of progress has been made, maybe in the right direction towards anti-racism, someone has to come in and save what they're trying to maintain.
Exactly.
I mean, your story is so. I watched the video when it happened, and also, my mom was a barista.
Yeah.
Single mom, and I cannot. First of all, my mom never would have done anything like that, but it did hit home for me also because everyone drinks Starbucks. Everyone goes to Starbucks, and I remember back then being so upset by it. And also knowing back then too that whatever sensitivity training Starbucks did, how long did they shut down for?
A
That
day.
a day.
One day.
I knew back then that's not going to do anything.
Nope. And it didn't. Did you see what they did recently?
Yes. And that was actually an uncomfortable conversation concerning race that I had to have with my family, where with one of my sisters, I was very much disagreeing with her. I didn't want to go there, and I have been boycotting, and I could not believe that they weren't letting people stand up for this. It's just ridiculous. That it goes beyond corporate bullshit.
It does. It does. When I saw that, I was like, yo, because we had actually tried to work with them in the beginning, and they blew us off.
Of course they
Many
did.
times. They blew us off. They were like, they got on a phone call with us reluctantly. They're like, well, we're doing our own things. You know, we hired Robin DiAngelo, but yet 2 years later, you told people they couldn't wear Black Lives Matter pins as baristas. And then, to be honest, they actually came up with this statement. They actually lied about us in the media, and I called them out, and they immediately got onto a phone call with us. I was like, I just want to make sure that the public knows what actually happened, because they said something along the lines of, we've been trying to work with Michelle and Melissa, but we can't come to an agreement yet. I was like as if we were being difficult. I was like, oh, Melissa, did you see this? And I'm like, no, you guys literally told us that you're doing your own thing, and you just didn't want to work with us at this time. It wasn't important to you. And they said that we hadn't had an agreement yet. And I was like, okay. So I knew that the whole closing down stores was just a PR stunt. I mean, clearly, why wouldn't you want to work with the two girls that, I mean, I didn't have any ill will towards them. It wasn't you, it was a barista. Like, she was not the CEO. I understand that. Like, So at the beginning, I wasn't necessarily upset with Starbucks. So I just assumed you would want to work with us. But then I found out later on that apparently she was from like middle of nowhere, Ohio. Why would you put her in one of the blackest cities in America and think that she was going to be racially competent enough to serve? And you have to have these conversations.
I doubt they even thought of that.
Exactly.
I doubt they even thought.
So here we are 2 years later, and there was Ahmaud Arbery and then Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and so many others, and our account grew by literally over 300,000 in like 2 weeks. So we're just super grateful that people are finally understanding what we've been trying to say for 2 years, which is, you need to educate yourself. Because if you grew up like I did, I went to an all-white school. I learned that much. I learned about Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and Jackie Robinson, as if they were the only 3 Black people that ever existed.
Yeah. Where'd you grow up?
Hershey, Pennsylvania.
Like Hershey's chocolate.
Yes, we were the only the only chocolate in the town. There was 3 families, and it was tough, man. It was confusing because I was also African, so I experienced racism, but I didn't understand why. I'm like, I don't understand why. And it wasn't until my 20s that I started diving into and actually educating myself, because it was too painful for me to even look at. I didn't want to go there. I didn't want to think about, I didn't want to know the truth, to be honest, because I knew it was going to be too painful for me. And all my friends were white. I dated white guys. And when you experience that much racism, you internalize it. And I was trying to, at one point, separate myself from the Black community and be like, oh, no. I'm not like that. I'm African. I'm different. But I recognized that white people were nicer to me when they found that I was African. It was, oh, well, now you're exotic. Now you're different. And I think another reason is that they didn't have slavery mirroring back at them. They felt more comfortable with me because they didn't have any guilt. They could look at me and talk to me, 0 guilt.
No shame involved.
Exactly. And when I realized that worked, I just went with that. And it was a really shameful time in my life, a few years. And I wouldn't have been able to admit this to you 5 years ago, because I was still dealing with that. I still had a lot of shame around the fact that I was trying to separate myself from being Black American. And, but I was born in America and I'm Black. So I'm a Black American.
Yeah.
Some people don't know that I am African. You would never know that. And I need white people to realize that, when someone tells me I don't have any biases, I'm like, you're lying, homie. I grew up with you. And if I can have biases against Black Americans, what? You know how confusing that is? Like, I'm like, yo, Michelle, that was a racist thought about where is that coming from? But when you grow up in that area and you're being told you're an Oreo, you're not really like them, you're like white on the outside, you're white on the inside, you're like, oh, well, it must be true. There must be something different. And I didn't have enough education to know differently until I had my own racist interaction with a police officer when I was 23. They literally thought that I was a thieving sex worker. Literally walked into a club, 5 police officers in bulletproof vests with crime unit on their vests. I'm skinny. I'm like 117 pounds right now. Back then I was like 112. So they're walking in and I'm like, what's going on? They asked me to come outside and I go outside with them. And they're literally, one dude in particular is treating me like I am this woman. I was livid, but I was terrified. I literally started peeing myself.
Oh my God.
I remember trying to hold it because I was like, what's going to happen to me? Am I going to go to jail? I don't understand what's happening. I was like, I work at Calvin Klein and Nationwide Insurance. Like, I don't know.
And what did you, like, plucked you out of
Yes.
the club?
Yes. And it was and I remember saying to the cop, I said, you can't treat me like this. This isn't okay. And I remember he walked back, got in my face and goes, this is your fault. And I said, and that's when it clicked for me. I said, my fault for being Black, for fitting the description. A white female police officer actually grabbed me and she like pulled me to the side and she told me to go report him the next day because she's seen him be racist before. And I was super grateful and I went and I did it and I went to the police station and I was like 23. Went to the police station and I reported him. They're like, oh yeah, we've had complaints about him before. I'm like, oh, so then why is the lead officer in an investigation when the suspect is Black?
Yeah.
If you know. And then later on in the years, I thought to myself, why did she do anything in the moment? Why did she pull me aside and almost whisper that to me? Why wouldn't she have stopped him in the middle of his clearly racist act?
Yeah.
And do something?
It would have been much more effective if she had. But even then, she probably would have been punished.
She would have been. I have a couple of friends who are police officers right now, and they say trying to fight racism in the police force is very lonely, and it's actually scary because you do face retaliation. You could be put on death duty. You don't know what's going to happen to you if you're a cop and speak out against, because there's so much racism in the force that it's almost part of who they are.
Absolutely.
Which is why she had to pull me aside and say it quietly.
Jesus. So they didn't arrest you. She kind of dissolved.
No. Well, they realized I wasn't her. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, and the guy was there. Apparently, so the situation was this white kid, he like took home this Black sex worker, and when he woke up, all his money was gone. And before the cops showed up, he actually got right up to my face. I remember thinking to myself, I was like, what are you doing? He thought I was her. I'm like, how do you sleep with a woman and not know that I'm not her? Like,
I'm sorry it's happening.
Yes. He thought I was her.
Wow.
I was like, dude, you fugly. I would never. What are you talking about? What? I'm not her. Yeah, he thought I was her. They all just thought I was her. And the cops just believed him.
Of course they did. I'm so glad. I mean, I feel like you were lucky that you realized you weren't her.
I was incredibly lucky.
Damn, I'm sorry you went through that.
It's all right. I can laugh about it now, but at the time I was like, and you know what? And again, another situation where no one around me said anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like white people, like we got I mean, look at what's happening right now. We just had the largest civil rights movement in history.
Yep.
And that's because white people got off the couch and came out in the streets with us.
Woke up.
They woke up.
And everyone's been using the word woke for years now, but I don't know if it was truly an awakening until this moment.
Beautiful. Absolutely. To me, absolutely. Like I had chills. I cried throughout, watching protests. because this is what solidarity means. This is what it is. This is us demanding justice and demanding peace. And you know, the police brutality that you were seeing against a lot of these protesters, I hope people understand and realize that that's how much they want to protect their right to do whatever they want to us.
Yep.
I don't think
It's
what people
like a last dying breath hanging on to something that everyone else is aware needs to be drastically changed.
Yeah, I don't think that way people were anticipating being tear gassed when you're not doing anything, being tear gassed when you don't have any weapon. That's just like a little itty bitty snippet of what the Black experience has been like. You do nothing and you are attacked. I mean, like on a very literal way. And I'm so grateful. I hope that we can. It felt a little bit of. It feels like there's a little bit of slowness happening. Like it's quieting down a little teeny bit, but our count is still growing. So I'm grateful, and I'm hoping that people are continuing to do their work and educating themselves and looking inward. And you know, I'm seeing a lot of people wanting to quickly jump to do things. They want to jump and create a page or a website, and I'm like, nah. You just need to relax. And
you need to educate yourself first. Yeah. That's, you know, where I'm at now. I mean, I feel like I've been nervous about this conversation too, because I feel like I'm so new to this in my education, and to even learn, like, I feel like I don't even have the right to call myself an anti-racist yet. But
you're an anti-racist.
I mean, but then I've come to the realization that it's every decision. It's second by second that you are making these decisions, and you're looking in the mirror, even like you're saying, and every thought that you have, or if you check yourself and you recognize something that doesn't feel right, you can do one of two things, and you can be an anti-racist about it, and you can do nothing and thereby be a racist, or be overtly racist and just think that what you're saying is the truth. And that's been, I mean, my awakening sadly came late, and I was not willfully ignorant. It was not like I didn't know that this was going on. Mm-hmm. I grew up in Denver, Colorado, in a suburb, and very white, very white. I can count on one hand how many Black kids were in my high school. But then at the same time, I was not completely ignorant to things, because my dad worked for the professional sports teams in Denver for the Nuggets and the Broncos. So I was at least exposed to Black people. And athletes, no matter how much money they make, are still victims of racism.
Did you see it? Did you see any racism towards the athletes, or did they talk about it?
I did, because I was so young, but I'm sure my dad did. Yeah, he's a doctor for the teams, so he worked pretty closely with a lot of those guys, and I'm sure my dad saw stuff when they were traveling, they were going to other cities, when I don't know. So I didn't. It wasn't like I just had a white lens over my eyes. But like you, my schooling did not really cover it. We read like Maya Angelou, and read Beloved, and we, like, my classic literature class, we at least had Black writers that we had syllabus. But history, same as you, Martin Luther King, usually just Black History Month, Rosa Parks, Jackie Robinson, and then like a villainized version of Malcolm X.
Oh yeah, I thought it was bad.
I thought it was so bad. I thought they painted him to be a terrorist in the history books.
Yep.
And it was very much like his methods and his movement, and we didn't watch any of his speeches.
Watching now, you're like, oh my gosh, he's so. To me, he was like an academic, like, really? Yeah. I'm like, really? How? Yep.
And his journey was so beautiful. How he realized what he realized and what he came to learn. Like, I've since read his biography, and it's so moving. And then so I moved out of Colorado and I went to college in New York City, and that was like massive culture.
Yeah.
Like going from white suburbia,
Yeah.
the big city, and I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
I loved it so much. And I witnessed a lot.
Mm.
On the subway,
Yep.
I witnessed, and I don't even know if I would clock it, but I wouldn't. I think I would just brush it off and be like, I guess that's just the way things are. I mean, police and
Right.
pigs and whatever. What can I do about it?
Right.
Um, and I did. I mean, I had a bit of more of an education in college. You know, I took like a cultural psychology class that I loved. I read James Baldwin. I love him, and I love his books and his essays, but it still wasn't enough to get me off my ass and show up. Until recently, I think I was so heartbroken by everything that was happening with Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor. And then when George Floyd happened, I heard from my friend who is on Supergirl with me, McCod Brooks, and we were texting as a group text. We have a cast group chat, and he was not doing okay. And I called him, and we had this amazing conversation, and he really was the one that opened my eyes, I think, to how I had been claiming to be neutral about it. And saying, well, I'm not racist, but like not actively doing anything against racism.
Right.
And I had known him for 5 years by this time and worked with him very closely and seen things that he had gone through at work.
Yep.
And was always, and like would talk to him about it when I would see things that he would go through, or he would tell me things that would happen, or things that people would say to him that were overtly racist, that were not great. And I would obviously acknowledge that he had gone through those things and hate that my friend was experiencing these things, but I was not showing up. And I was not standing up for him, and I was not helping to amplify his voice, and even just this last year, I mean, lots of things that I've witnessed, I've not done anything about. And I claimed it was because, well, I'm not Black, so I don't feel like I can talk about this. I don't feel like I can talk about this because I don't know the feeling of being Black in America. I don't know. I just made excuses. And that
comes from is, people, I just said this the other day, there's been a microscope on people of color for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And it's never been turned around on white people themselves.
Yep.
And so I was, well, that's a Black problem. That's a Black problem. Black people should be the one to fix it.
Oh.
If it were up to us, we would already have equality.
Yeah. Yeah. So it took.
No, go ahead.
It just took my friend telling me, you've got to take responsibility for this, and you have, and he made me realize like that I do have this platform, and if I do care, like I was telling him that I did in my heart, why wouldn't I spread that?
Yeah.
Did
he call you out personally, or was he saying things that made you see?
He was saying things that made me see.
Yeah.
He was saying things that made me see, and he called me out personally for an entirely separate situation that he wasn't involved in, but that he like knew about. Even more opened my eyes. So, and after that conversation, it was past point of no return. Like I could not see anything else anymore. And my husband and I, like almost, I think a lot of people did, just like went into this hole, and we're glued to the TV, we're glued to our phones, we're just like so passionately wanting to be involved, like you were saying, like everyone's just like, what can we do, what can we do, what can we do?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually pregnant right now, so that was like yeah.
Wait, does anyone know that?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
Yeah, but
Congratulations.
thank you, but it added this other layer of like, Jesus, I can't let this be, I have to do this for my son, and
Yes.
I have to change myself. I have to look at
Yep.
myself. I have to look in the mirror. My husband has to do the same. We have to look at each other. We
Yep.
have to look at our white
Yep.
families and talk to them. Like, we have to do something so that when he's here, by the way, we're still going to be working on this and learning about it.
Yep.
But when he gets here, and when I'm already like trying to teach him. I'm already talking to my belly about this.
Yeah. Yes.
You
It's
know,
so interesting. That happened. The same thing happened to my best friend. She had a daughter, and that's what woke her up too. She was like, I need to be an example for my daughter. I need the world. I need to try and change the world how it's best I can for
mm-hmm.
my little girl. And I consider my friend's daughter my niece. Like, she makes it a point that like I see her often, because by age 3, kids are making sense of race.
Oh
By
yeah,
age 3, kids understand that it's in this country it's better to have white skin than dark skin.
the doll test video. Ugh. Anyone who
That's
has that video needs to watch it.
You need to watch it. It just goes to show it's never too early. Talk
No,
to your belly, girl. It is never too early.
we absorb everything. And when I watched that doll test video, the first thought I had was, I don't know if I would have done anything different. I don't know. I absolutely would have said the same things that those kids did.
Yes, I have to have a talk with my niece, my cousin's daughter. We have to talk to her about, you're a pretty brown girl. You're pretty, because she has started saying things, and she's 3. She
Yeah.
started saying things like, I like my white dolls better. I don't like my black dolls. And we're like, where is that coming from? We're a family of Africans. You're mostly around African people, but she goes to an international school in Ghana, and a lot of her friends are mixed or white, because it's a kind of a but not high end. What do you call it? It's what's the word for like elite? I don't know. I kind of like an elite school. So it's a lot of foreign people, a lot of Lebanese, a lot of Europeans, and there aren't too many dark skinned brown girls in the class like her. And so by already we're having to talk to her about loving your black skin at 3. She wants the Elsa doll. She doesn't want the other. She doesn't want the brown dolls.
Ugh. I
You know, how do you, it's heartbreaking, but as long as racism exists, we have work to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do feel like, you know, I think that also racism has created, like you were saying, it's so abnormal for everyone involved,
Mm-hmm.
including the people that are conditioned, the white people that are fooled into thinking that they're superior.
Yep.
It like created this massive mental health crisis.
You know what? I'm glad you said that. I'm glad you said it has created a mental health crisis, because I desperately needed a therapist when I was younger.
Mm.
Desperately needed to talk to somebody about what my mind was going through, what I was going through about my relationship with my blackness.
Yeah, your identity.
Literally, I mean, it's why right now I'm doing racial identity coaching, because I'm realizing that for me it was it was confusing, because I would look at myself in the mirror and I would like what I saw, but like just moving out through the world, I didn't feel comfortable. You know, like people staring at you, and it makes you so subconscious. It's like, is my hair okay? My dress okay? My walk, my talk? Why are these white people just staring at me all the time? And even for white people now, like what you're going through, it's, you know, coming to terms with the fact that you've been complacent and not done anything, or thinking about, okay, who am I without whiteness. If you
Yeah.
took my race away, who are you? Are you Toni Morrison said that. Who are you without your whiteness? Are you good? Are you
Can
still
you
good?
sit down on your pillow at night and feel good about how you treated people and what you did that day?
Yep.
It's
Yep.
that simple.
And you know what? It's I appreciate you saying that you came into the game late, but you know, Melissa, she's a middle-aged white woman. I won't say her age, but she's a middle-aged, she could literally be my mother.
Mhm.
And I'm 33. So she taught in inner city schools in the 80s. She even started her own anti-racism group back in the 80s. And she says that she didn't actually wake up until Starbucks.
Wow.
She didn't realize that she was actually performing white saviorism. She thought that she was like, her presence was literally helping these black and brown kids.
Yeah. Like almost an assimilationist attitude.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and I'm black, and I didn't start to look into these things until a few years ago. I'm black, and I didn't want to look at it because I knew that once I did that, my relationships were going to change. I lost my best friend, one of my best friends of 26 years after I became an activist.
Wow.
He doesn't talk to me anymore. And to
My
me,
God.
nothing is different about me. I'm literally the same clumsy, goofy, whatever, Michelle. I mean, like crazy, whatever. I'm the same. I just talk about race a little bit more. I just talk about my experiences that I don't think she understood. I think it was just too much for her. She didn't see me as black until I actually started talking about the things that have been going on.
And
I
that's
think
so dangerous too. Like that kind of color blindness, that's a thing and we just have to we can't do that right now.
we can't
We
do it. I
have
want
to,
you to see my color.
yeah. It we should be looking at every culture, every skin color. We should be looking at how everything intersects in terms of gender, in terms of like a queer space, in terms of like we need to be looking at everything and honoring all of it and respecting all of it and educating ourselves about all of it.
All of it.
Because by the way, that's only going to enrich us as a humanity as a
I mean,
whole.
look at your experience. You went from Colorado to New York, where it's incredibly diverse, and you loved it. I mean, diversity is a beautiful thing. Like
Yeah.
I love. I mean, I've been quite a few places. I've been to Spain, Costa Rica, Canada, Ghana, the UK, the
Mm-hmm.
islands. I wish people, I wish people embraced more where they came from,
Mm-hmm.
and brought that culture with them. Because what white people I think sometimes forget is that when they came to this country, they weren't immediately accepted. If you weren't from England, you weren't immediately accepted. If you were Irish, if you were Italian, some Italians were lynched.
Yeah.
They were treated like black people. You had to give up part of your culture wherever you came from in Europe. You had to literally give up all of your culture just to enter this exclusive white club and get the same treatment as the English people.
Yeah.
You had to leave part of your identity behind.
Yeah. You had to assimilate to what white European men thought were.
Yes, you had to assimilate. We unfortunately we can try our best to assimilate, but we can't do it because the skin color that's the barrier.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes I wish that way people would do maybe do a little bit more research, like where are your ancestors from? Check that out. Like that's super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Please go learn that and learn what they ate so I can come over and eat your food because I like eating food from other places. Like, you know, that's cool. And America always talks about being prideful of being this melting pot, but we've never actually accepted people from other places.
No.
We've never actually, it's like you can come from somewhere else as long as you assimilate.
Yeah.
And now, you know,
Yeah.
and now
Because
what we have
white
is
body is what America has defined as the body of America.
that is what they wanted. They almost wiped out an entire race culture of people. And then they brought over another race culture of people to literally build their wealth.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just gonna like this is like you have to talk about it how it was. The founding fathers were literal white supremacists.
Absolutely.
They all owned slaves.
Did you see that video of the guy in Costco not wanting to wear a mask and his shirt literally says, it says something like, in power since 1776.
Yes. What? Like, and I guarantee you, if you said you're racist, he would be like, "What are you talking about?"
Yeah. Oh, because that's all racism is. When you are a racist, all you're going to do is deny it.
Totally. I would rather you just be like, "Yeah, I don't like black people." I'd be like, "Thank you for telling me that so I can avoid you."
Yeah,
The
absolutely.
problem is they don't want to admit it, and that is what is so uh it's so scary, you know. Michelle, it's not the white guys that are bald with tattoos walking on the street. It's not them.
No.
It's the baristas. It's the white girl walking her dog. It's the guy in Costco with the weird
Yep.
shirt. You're not know what that shirt means. It's everyday normal looking people. Um, that's why we take an approach from an individual standpoint, because our systems are made up of individual people.
Right.
We're not trying to go for the very top. We're trying to get to individual people who make decisions every single day. I want to make sure that my doctor doesn't have some weird ass myth that black people can handle pain more, which is still a thing.
That's still like, have you experienced that?
I haven't, but my sister has.
Oh my God.
My brother has. My brother is a nurse, and unfortunately for these nurses at the Hershey Med Center, they didn't know he was a nurse, and he knew for a fact that he was being straight up neglected. Like, he knew that. My brother pulled out his own IV and walked out of the hospital.
Ah.
He literally pulled it out and walked out because he was being straight up neglected. He was like, "I'm a nurse. I know what's going on here."
I mean, that's been very much on my mind because also the statistics with pregnant black women that they're more likely, 3 times more likely to die in childbirth or from pregnancy related issues. Like, I can't even fathom.
Oh, my boyfriend is, he's like, "If you get pregnant, I want you to have a baby at home." Because we
I'm
don't, his yeah, his family has gone through some things. His mother has gone through some things that they do not trust the medical system here in this country. They tried to literally take out her uterus before she ever had her kids. He literally wouldn't exist. And then she went to a different hospital, and they were like, "We don't know why they told you you had to have an emergency hysterectomy. You don't have to do that." And she went on to have 3 healthy boys. And so, and they were African. They didn't really understand what's going on, but they had an inkling. They were like, "Something feels really off here." That's racism.
Yeah.
Why are you trying to take someone's uterus? Like, what are you gonna do with it? Another another Henrietta Lacks situation where you wanna, why do you want someone's uterus so bad? It's weird. There was we posted a story, actually it was probably close to 2 years ago, of this physician's assistant in Houston, Texas, who ended up getting fired. Somehow his text messages were exposed, and he was like one of the most, saying the most racist things. He had anti-Semitic comments, he had anti-black comments, and he literally said, "That's just locker room talk. All my doctors, we all talk like that." You think someone like him that's taking care of black people and Jewish people or Hispanic people is going to be giving them the same care and treatment?
Absolutely.
Absolutely not.
No.
It's terrifying. You have no idea. You have no idea. I mean, it almost, like, honestly, sometimes it makes us, I think, be kind of unnecessarily overly nice to people, because you don't know how they feel about you. And sometimes it's just so shitty when you're like, "I think I'm being extra nice to this white person because I don't know if they're racist or not." I don't want to do that. Sometimes I just, like, like, sometimes I don't feel like being extra nice, and I just want to be normal nice. And
Yeah.
or just normal, but you
Or
feel
just
like,
be who you are without having to think about it.
right. And it's like, and to be honest, now that I think about it, if we have to do that, we probably have some kind of vibration happening that makes you feel like I need to be extra nice in this situation because I don't know if this person likes me because of my skin color. We can there's a clear vibe. Like, I can tell when someone's looking at me because, actually, especially if it's a white male, if it's an older white male, I know whether he's looking at me because he's like interested in me, or he's just curious, or he doesn't like me, or, I know this sounds fucked up, but sometimes I'm like, "Oh my God, if this was 1700, you would own me." Like, you can, you get those feelings, like, you get those weird stares, those weird looks, those weird, like, why are you looking at me in such an animalistic type of way? Just happened to me 2 weeks ago. I was walking into a post office. This guy sitting in his car, he would not take his eyes off of me. And I was so tired of it that I literally did not take my eyes off of him. And we, it was so weird. I just held his gaze for like 10 seconds. I was like,
and he didn't look away? Wow.
He did not look away. And in those moments, you don't know what it is. And when you experience that your entire life, sometimes you just, Melissa and I do a live every Monday, and some kid yesterday was like, well, Black people resist arrest, and that's why they get, that's why they get arrested. Yeah. And I'm like, do you have any idea what it's like to constantly be targeted? Like, do you think that if you were getting arrested for something that you didn't do, or something super minor, and you knew that your rights were being infringed, do you think that you would just stand there and be like, all right, I guess take me to jail?
Mm-hmm. No, and by the way, white people do, and they run away from the cops and nothing happens to them.
Exactly. Actually, very good point. They actually do that. They do resist, and the cops are like, can you please calm down? Can you please
get in cop cars and steal the cop car? And
I've seen that.
Where? Like, that's...
A few weeks before George Floyd, we saw groups of white men with AK-47s or AR-15s storming Capitol buildings because they wanted to get their damn haircut. What happened to them? What happened to them? They had loaded guns.
Yep.
That's not a threat? That's not scary to you?
I don't even remember police officers being in those buildings in Michigan. I don't remember seeing them in the footage.
That's a good point. I don't know. This is the reality of America. It's two different Americas. It's anyone watching this, please watch 13th on Netflix if you have not done so yet.
So
have you seen it? So actually 15 minutes in, I had to pause it and I just sobbed.
Yeah, it's hard.
So much as 15 minutes in, I was like, I didn't learn about any of this I was like 27 until I watched it.
Yeah.
Maybe even later. And I was older. Actually, I think I was close to 30. And I remember being like, what?
Yeah.
How did I not know any of this? How did I not know that police used to be slave patrol and slave catchers? How did I not know that? Like, people need to understand that what we mean by racism is innovative is that back in the day, the police were protecting white wealth. They were protecting plantation owners. They were protecting their property. If their property ran away, they went and retrieved their property to bring them back to the plantation to work. Now it's 2020, and the majority of people in jail are Black people. Are you still there?
Okay, sorry.
It's all right. The majority of people in jail are Black people. And then I found out a few years ago that a lot of corporations use prison labor, which I
yeah, a lot of corporations that I realized that I purchased from.
I know. I know. I'm like, oh my God. Like, I found out that Estee Lauder and like, who owns like MAC and all these things are like giant Trump supporters. And I'm like,
oh no.
I love lipstick. Love lipstick. What am I going to do? But to your point, it's like those everyday moments, those moment to moment decisions.
Split second decisions. And I've actually, you know what? I mean, and also in terms to go back to talking about it being a mental health crisis. I did like sort of go through this weird depression after I feel like my eyes were opened, but it didn't feel like a clinical depression would.
Right.
It felt productive.
Right.
And it felt, yes, I felt those feelings of shame. And yes, I had to combat my white fragility. And yes, I had to like really look at myself in the mirror and like kind of take stock of my entire life. And every decision I've made up to now, and people I've hurt with my fragility, and talk to people I've hurt with my fragility, talk to my family and confront them. But all of that almost in a weird way feels like self-care right now.
Yes. Yeah, because it's personal development.
Yeah, it's growth.
It's growth.
Who doesn't want to grow and be a better human being? Like, that's what I don't understand about denying. If someone calls you out as racist, I feel like white people are a lot of times just so offended because that's basically someone saying they don't like you.
It's the worst thing I think it's like one of the worst things for a white person to be called. The worst thing for them to be called
Yeah.
is racist.
But
I understand that.
Yeah, totally. But instead of getting defensive and immediately going to the attack and be like, no, I'm not racist. I'm a good person. You can be a good person and be a racist.
Yes, you can. I have a lot of friends that growing up, when I think they were bad people, absolutely not.
No.
Were they racist? Yeah. Like when it came down to it, they would say some racist things, and I would be like, "Yo, that is incredibly racist." Like my friend that I'm no longer friends with, is she a bad person? Absolutely not. Mm-hmm. Does she have a lot of racial biases? 1000%. Mm-hmm. The fact that we are no longer friends, all because I talk about racism, that's the epitome of fragility. You can't even talk about it.
Yeah.
You would rather, and it's been over 2 years. So where is the growth there? Why can't we talk? Like, and if you don't want to talk about race, right? Like having uncomfortable conversations, like learning how to have race, which is a very uncomfortable conversation for a lot of people. You learn how to do that. You learn how to have the conversations. That's just going to build your muscles for having uncomfortable conversations in other areas of your life. Mm-hmm. If you can't talk about this, what else are you purposely not talking about? What else are you trying to sweep under the rug and pretend isn't there?
Yep.
This is personal development.
Yes.
On a different level that we have not experienced before.
No.
I'm so happy you brought that up.
A complete redefinition of our consciousness right now.
Yes.
As a country and a society.
Yes. We have never had this reckoning. And actually it's us that are having the reckoning. It's the people that are having the reckoning. The people at the top are still not trying to have the reckoning. Like they're kind of getting there, but
even when they're acting like they are, yeah. Even when they're acting like they are, they're not.
No, like I saw them recently, the whole bunch of people did like they kneeled and they're wearing kente cloth, and the kente cloth is a very traditional Ghanaian cloth.
Pelosi was wearing one.
Yeah, I was like, get my cloth off your neck if you're not gonna, if you're not going to end qualified immunity and tear down private prisons, and like if you're not gonna do these things, this is just performative. This is exactly. That's what you call performative allyship.
Yep. And that's the other thing too that I think a lot of white people need to realize, and that I took even me a bit of time to realize too, is that doing the work, and I know everyone has seen that. I know everyone has seen you have to do the work.
Yep.
It requires you. There is so much out there.
So much information. Since enslaved Africans learned how to read and write, mind you, secretively, because they weren't allowed to learn how to read and write, they've been telling their story. Mm-hmm. They've been talking about their experiences. They've been talking about racism. Like, I think pretty much everybody loves reggae. There's so much talk about racism and injustice in reggae. And I don't think people have any idea.
No.
Like, there's so much information. And sometimes every once in a while I get frustrated. I've had a lot of people, I've had people come into my DMs and say things like, will you please record a video of the time you've experienced racism so I can put it on my page? And I'm like, no.
Why?
Girl, I don't know. And I'm like, there's so many stories out there. There's so many stories for you to choose from. And you're coming into a random Black person's DM and asking them to recall a traumatic experience for them, for you, for your page, for your page. And who's going to get the credit for that? Not me. Not me. But again, it goes back to that eagerness. And I think it's also what you said about mental health and personal growth. That's where the hard work is. The hard work is actually looking within yourself. It's easy to look at someone, not easy, but it's easy to look at someone else's pain. Well, let me just go grab some terrible stories and make a page and whatever. That's not hard.
No.
It is much harder to look at yourself and say, where have I been complicit? Where have I messed up? Where do I need to do the work? Where can I grow? Making a page about that's not growth. How is that growth? I did my
Well,
senior
you're not
project.
solving yourself.
Exactly. I did my senior project in high school on the Holocaust.
Mm.
And I thought I was like a great person because I was talking about the suffering of Jewish people. But I realized that, like, after that, I didn't research anti Semitism.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't learn about the ways that it was still happening today. I just did my project and thought that I was like, well, back then we didn't use the word woke, but I thought I was like a really great person that I did this.
Mm.
It didn't make me a good person. What did I do after that? Literally nothing. It was a one-time deal.
Yeah.
And this work is constant. It's constant. I mean, I've been researching a lot about racial identity development with white people and black people, and that's what I'm literally coaching people on right now. And you can go in and out of stages. You can be really far ahead one day and something happens to you and you get really fragile one day and take 5 steps back.
Yeah.
Just like anything else in life.
Yep. All it takes is you saying something to someone and not clicking in your head. Oh, that
Melissa,
was.
Melissa and I still Melissa says that sometimes she still has thoughts. I still have thoughts. Again, because I grew up with white people, I spent more of my life immersed in white culture than I did out of white culture.
Yeah.
I can't pretend like any of that is not still living within me.
Of course not.
Like, I used to be an assimilationist.
I just finished reading Ibram Kendi's book, How to Be an Anti-Racist,
Mm-hmm.
in the middle of his stamp from the beginning right now, and he's so thorough. He's
Oh
so
my God.
thorough. And How to Be an Anti-Racist, one of the biggest takeaways I had. I mean, it's a beautiful book, and especially everyone should read it. And the last 3 chapters I felt were so moving. I could not put the book down. It's all important, but you
All
get
of
to
it.
the end, the way he wraps it up, it's very moving. But one of the biggest takeaways I had, and this analogy he used I felt was so poignant, was that racism is a cancer in our bodies. And to be an anti-racist, you have to locate it, do the x-rays, figure out where it is.
Yes.
You have to go through the chemotherapy.
Yeah.
You have to treat it, and it's not going to be fun, and it's not going to be easy. It will be very painful.
Yep.
It's going to suck
Yep.
times, and then other times you're going to have great victories and feel a lot of hope. It's a roller coaster, and you have to eradicate it. You have to eradicate it from your body, physically.
Physically. I love that you said that, physically, because like I said, when I watched the reaction from people going through fragility, like the barista, when I asked her why she did that, and her immediate physical response was to turn bright red.
And then
And
dismiss.
think about that. I'm like, that's, like you said, that was, I mean, it was like the racism was like coming out of her chest and coming out of her face. It was just redness, and she was so uncomfortable. And like, I mean, I don't know what was going through her mind at that moment. I do know later on that they said that actually, the CEO was Howard Schultz.
Mm-hmm.
He talked to her personally, and he said that he asked her would she have called the cops if the guys were white, and she said no. So she clearly knew to some degree. But look at what that did to her. Look at how racism, how did it serve you?
Yeah.
Now the country hate, no, not the country, but now you have millions of people who think you're a terrible human being. And I mean, the fact that you admitted that, which you're not very a good human being, but all the people that get exposed for their racism, it ruins their lives.
Yeah.
Just like cancer ruins your life.
Yep. Yep.
And how can you
catch
even,
it before it's stage 4? Like,
we are at
no?
stage 4, and if we do not fix this, I am so scared of, I'm just scared of what is to come. You know, they always say things are going to get worse before they get better. And I don't know how it could get much worse besides more violence, before more people, besides more people dying. And if we don't get a handle on this,
I
I mean,
know.
to be honest,
I,
I'm going to Ghana when the borders open.
I feel that fear too. I feel that fear. And by the way, my friend who kind of ushered me into this awakening, he left. He's not
He
in
did.
right now. Yeah. He was like, I'm scared. He's like, who's to say it's not going to be me? And so he went. I don't want to say where. Well, actually, he's posting a lot about it. He's in Mexico, but
Yeah. Right. It's
um,
true though. I mean, like when my brother had to call the cops recently, he said, my brother is a tall man. He's like almost 6 foot. He's like 220 pounds, but he's an absolute teddy bear. And he calls the cops and he says, I'm a black male that's calling.
yeah.
He has to tell them first who he is. So when they show up, they're not confused about who is the person that needs to be handled or controlled. Like when he doesn't answer my text messages, I get so upset. When he doesn't answer my call, I get so mad at him. He's like, what do you mean I'm fine? I'm fine. I'm like, I don't know that you're fine.
Mm-hmm.
He's my favorite person on the planet. If anything happens to him, I'm so sorry. The world will end. Like, the world will end if anything happened to he's 30, but he's my baby brother. And, like, my man, where, as soon as the borders open, he's out. He's out, and doing this work, I think to myself, I think it would be easier for me to do this maybe if I wasn't also immersed in this energy that's racism. Like we were just grocery shopping the other day. He gets in the car and his mood's a little off, and he was like, "I just hate racists." I was like, "What just happened? What just happened?" And he was like, "You know the look." Yeah. And for people that's like, well, how do you know? Because we were just at a restaurant today, right before I got on this live. Everyone in there was white. No, there was one of the chefs was Asian, but everyone else was white. And they were so freaking cool and just like like you didn't think about race at all because everyone was being super normal and talking to everybody, and it was just a super cool vibe. You just know the vibe. Like you can just feel it, like you just know. And I just hope that way people really do that work and understand that you have been manipulated and lied to.
Yes.
You should be just as pissed off to realize that you have been manipulated and lied to believe this bullshit that race is real, because it was literally you're listening to Stamps. It was literally created to keep us divided.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I don't know what's more beautiful than being in a room full of people of different cultures and different colors. Like,
I agree with you.
I think it's so cool. I think it's cool to go to a different country and experience their culture and just be immersed in that. And how is it that you don't want to experience that?
I know. I don't know. I don't understand that either. And also I think it's also important to realize that like you can strongly disagree with that man in the White House and what he stands for and his overt racism, while also strongly denying that you have it in yourself. And
Yes.
you're willing to really acknowledge that it's in you, and like we're talking about the look in the mirror, you're gonna miss out on what you're talking about that is so beautiful, that the diversity and multiculturalism and appreciating different cuisines and where different people come from and their customs. And we have so much to learn from each other that is good.
Yes.
That we're missing out on when we are stuck in and behind in these like cages of being manipulated.
Yes. Yeah, like they don't want us having this conversation right now.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want that. Like if this was back in the day, if this was 1700, we were having this conversation, they would make it a law that a black person and a white person
Yep.
no longer be on a live together.
Yep.
Because every step of the way, what people need to understand is that there were white people that tried to speak out against racism. There
Yep.
were people that tried to end it, and every single time they tried to do it, the founding fathers would enact a different law or policy
Yeah.
to incentivize people to not work together.
And that's the problem, is that it's all stemming from policy. It's not stemming from, like you were saying, looking at people as individuals and not defining them by their race. It's and that's kind of like another way that I've tried to be governing myself. I feel like I have to apologize also, because I feel like I have major baby brain right now.
I didn't realize that was a thing until like a bunch of my friends, I'd be like, "Yo, what is wrong with you?"
I did
like, oh.
not think that I was ever going to experience it, because usually I feel like I'm pretty on top of things and I'm like a super organized person, and then all of a sudden, like, I'll be in the middle of a sentence and then it's gone. But I was going to say, like, in my day-to-day life, in those like second to second moments where you're making the decisions, or you're thinking about a thought you just had, or you're having these kinds of conversations, like, it is the way you govern yourself. We need to be like very, very extremely baby brain critical of our policy makers. We need to be educated on who they are, what they stand for, what they're going to do, and then we need to do that for ourselves. We have to, every second, we're governing ourselves as human beings, as individuals. Each decision is a policy that we're enacting in our life.
There's a book, if any of the followers are interested in reading, it's called Dying of Whiteness. I just started reading it. I'm like on like chapter 2. And it talks about how our policymakers literally manipulate white people to vote against their own interests.
Yeah.
And it's written by a white man who's a doctor who watches patients die because they have this false narrative, this lie that resources are going to go to Mexicans, or they're going to go to welfare queens, or they're going to go to people. Tennessee, the state of Tennessee voted a certain, I don't know how they voted, but whoever they chose to govern their state lowered everybody's life expectancy in the entire state.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? That's crazy.
Because the only people that benefit from those kinds of racist policies are the ones creating them. Because they're making their own self-interest, money and power and big houses. And the fact that, like, I don't know the exact percentages, but what is it, like, the majority of the wealth in the world belongs to the top 1%.
I think it's like the 300 wealthiest people, 300 in the world, I think. Someone just told me this today. Own the majority of the wealth in the entire world.
Yep.
I'm like, how is that possible? And it is so interesting. I can't wait to get through the rest of this book.
What's it called again?
Dying of Whiteness.
Dying of Whiteness. Because
what these politicians do is they use coded language as actually very racist language. They just don't say I'm being racist. Yeah. They just use coded racial words that are associated with certain groups of people: Black people, Native people, Mexicans, Hispanics. And it makes white people think that, well, I can't have money going to them, but you're taking money from yourself. And Lyndon B. Johnson, actually, back in the 70s or 60s, I think in the 60s, actually, you can look it up on Snopes. He says something along the lines of, if you can convince the lowest or poorest white man to think he is above the lowest or poorest Black man, you can take from him. And he was like, hell, he'll even empty his pockets for you.
Wow.
A president of the United States of America said this. Flat out. It was a real quote.
And it's so true. And we watch it happen now. Everyone that voted, that was so against the Affordable Care Act, and so many people that were, all the horrid pictures that you see of people screaming at young Black girls going to school for the first time in an integrated school. Like, people were so against that. And then when things actually work, I feel like, and people realize that those policies, the anti-racist policies that end up working, like school integration, which still, I mean, has its problems, but people ended up supporting the idea.
Right.
Exponentially so, because they realized that it was good.
Right. Your kid grows up to be less of an asshole when he's around other kids that don't look like him.
Yeah.
Like, that's that's good for his humanity. It's good for his development. It's good for his career when he's older and he can. I mean, this is the fact. The country is getting more diverse. I think they said like minute by minute. Well,
Yeah.
maybe not much because the person in the White House is trying to stop immigration from other certain countries. Um, but people are mixing. People are in interracial relationships. Like it's happening. It's, we're only the minority in this country. Black and brown people are the majority globally.
Yeah.
Yet we're not enslaving people. Trying to we're just trying to live our lives.
Yeah.
All we're trying to do is like live and let live. But people need to understand that racism is, for the beginning, it's been about money.
Yeah.
They know,
It was always a transaction.
always, they know that there's something different about me. They know that. But they would make up things along the way, like saying the size of a white person's brain makes them smarter. Like, that's the weirdest shit. Or like just crazy things to justify what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
But there were always white people along the way that said, something feels really off about this. Something feels really wrong about this. And they were like, oh, no, 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 it's fine. They're not total humans. And they're doing the same thing today when they say, white people are like, something seems off about this. And they're like, oh, no, 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 white people are just more violent. Or I'm sorry, black people are just more violent than other people. No.
No.
But that's not the global black experience. You go to Africa, I mean, I feel more safe in Africa than I do here. And people think that it's such a violent place. I'm like, I literally feel more safe there. And I feel more scared in certain parts of Philly and Camden, New Jersey.
Yeah.
And you have to understand that, again, it's about control. It's about continuing to somehow profit off of black bodies, because when slavery ended, they were not trying to really have to do all that work. It literally turned into capitalism.
Yeah.
Like, that's what.
Or like racism and capitalism.
Think of plantation owners as corporations. When you drive past a prison, think of it as a plantation.
Yes.
That's what we have to understand, that even though Black Lives Matter is not, my life mattering is not political. It shouldn't be political, but unfortunately is, in the sense that if we do not make smart voting decisions, people are going to keep dying.
Mm-hmm. Now is the time where we cannot afford to not be informed.
What other books have you read? You read Stamped.
Stamped at the Middle of Now, and I read How to Be an Anti-Racist.
You read Malcolm X.
Uh-huh. I've read, it's long.
Yeah.
It's big. And then I've read before, which I want to reread a lot of James Baldwin, but my favorite is The Fire Next Time. I remember reading that and really just loving it.
The Fire Next Time? Who's that by?
James Baldwin.
Oh, The Fire Next Time. I've only read a few of his things. I get very emotional when I read his work. I have to be in a very specific emotional place to read certain things.
He's so poetic about it.
He's so poetic. Like I read recently, I didn't know his father actually was like a very sad man, mm-hmm. because apparently like his father believed what white people had to say about black people, that internalized racism. He believed it. And I'm like, oh, I think I need to read more. Maybe that's what helped fuel James', I don't know, poetic magic. I don't know.
Yeah, that he had the wherewithal to understand that it wasn't, to understand, to love himself.
And to see what it could, like what it can do to you. Even when, exactly, like it really turns you against yourself. And I just really hope that what people are gaining from this conversation, that your voice is needed.
Mm-hmm.
Your voice is needed. And again, think about the fact that we just had the largest civil rights movement in history because white people showed up and showed up with us. We can literally, I mean, there were policy changes that happened immediately after that. There were police departments that were looking at things that they haven't looked at in 20 years.
Yeah. And it was enough, and we still have so much more to do.
So much more to do. But the fact that you could potentially be part of a movement that can change the world,
Yeah.
should be really exciting. Like,
Yeah.
I want to change the world.
So do I. So do I. And I think that is such a beautiful sentiment that you just said. And it's all, of course, it's stressful and overwhelming to be alive in times like these, but at least you get to witness it. And at least you get to make the choice, like you just said, to be a part of it and to be a part of such a transformative time in history. Because we can't allow it to not be transformative. It has to be.
Yeah. Let's try to envision a world that's like truly post-racial. Let's try to envision a world where, let's try to actually like live out MLK's dream that you are judged by your character and not the color of your skin. But
Yep.
the only way to do that is to get uncomfortable and do that work and uncover your biases. Every single person, you have them. We live in a white supremacist world. It's where we are right now in the history of humanity, and we can turn it around.
Yep. Absolutely. I believe we can. I'm scared like you are, but about how bad it will get. But I do think ultimately, I, I, I want to believe that justice wins and that the right things happen.
I think it will. I mean, I've been tired over the past few weeks just from talking so much.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm making up for 33 years of not being really able to talk before. So I'm super grateful that people want to talk about the conversation, want to have the conversation in the first place. I mean, people that I've known for years are reaching out to me and saying, "What books do you think that I should read?" And I'm like, "Really? You? Okay." Like, all right. Like I'm down. I don't mind being that person that someone comes to and says, like, what should I read first? But just know that there's a million resources out there. Melissa and I post literally every single day.
You guys you do really well curating your.
Thank you. It's a lot. We can easily be on social media for 4 hours a day, easily. Actually, I took my timer off of all my social media accounts because I'm like, I'm just on it, trying to scroll, trying to find things that will resonate with people and that people can digest and absorb and actually use and move forward. So we're with you. We're learning with you. I just started this journey myself a few years ago. So we are literally all in this together. And I want people to just keep up the momentum and rest when you need to. Take care of yourself. You don't have to think about racism like necessarily every single day or do something every single day. Well, I mean, okay, you do, but do not overexert yourself because this is going to be a lifelong journey until it ends.
Yep. And you have to be, you got to be aware every second.
Every second, be aware. When you see something, say something. And the more you educate yourself about systemic racism and what racism looks like today, the more you're going to be able to see it for what it is and call it out in the moment. But you can't call out something that you can't see.
Or that you don't understand.
Or you don't understand. So just keep educating yourself, read White Fragility, read Me and White Supremacy, watch 13th.
1619 is a great podcast too.
1619. Listen to the Seen on Radio, Seeing White podcast series. That's incredible. I'm trying to think what else. Anything about James Baldwin, read the Malcolm X autobiography, read Letter from a Birmingham Jail from MLK. I mean, read Toni Morrison, read Maya Angelou, read just so many.
There's so much you have to do is Google. Just get on Google.
Get on the Googles. And let's just be in this together and keep fighting and changing the world. And even if we don't live to see the end of this, which I don't know how that's going to play out, at least you've done your part.
Yep.
and you tried, and you can lay your head down at night and say, I tried to make humanity in our society better.
Yep. Yeah.
So anyways, I could probably talk to you forever.
Likewise.
I looked up your birthday, and your birthday is October 4th, and mine's the 6th. So I
Libra.
love Libras.
The
The
best.
two guys that I dated before my boyfriend both had the same birthday with three days, and they were October 5th. And I'm like, I love myself. I love.
I've actually never been with a Libra.
Sorry, they're cool. Cancers are cool. My boyfriend has a Cancer. He's cool too. But I just find that I never believed in that stuff before, but I do now find like an energy. So this has been one of my favorite conversations, one of my favorite lives that I've done so far. So I just want to thank you for jumping on here with me.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I feel very grateful, and I could have talked to you forever too. And thank you for excusing my baby brain. I do feel like I want to talk to you again once I've had this child.
Yes.
Not doggy.
How many months along are you?
I'm in the 3rd trimester, so like weeks away. So close. So
weeks
close.
away.
Yeah. It's crazy.
That's so exciting.
No, I can't wait. I just can't wait to meet him and teach him how to be an anti-racist.
Yes. Oh my God, that's so. Well, I tell everyone that I meet, and I tell them like, listen, I am everyone that I meet, like all my friends, I'm like, I am the black auntie. So I'm the black auntie to all the kids. I just bought my friend's daughter like sneakers the other day. I haven't even seen her for weeks, but I'm so excited for your little one.
Thanks.
I wish you all the best luck through that entire process. I think it's the most. Sometimes I watch birthing videos for some reason, I just like cry. I think the birthing process is the most beautiful thing on the planet. So
Right for doing that. I can't I'm so scared to do that.
really, I don't know why I watch them, but I'm like, this is so amazing. This is so crazy. Like that you birth a human. I just think it's fantastic. So, oh my gosh, that's going to be so exciting for you.
I can't wait. I can't wait. And I'm so glad we got to do this. I'm grateful to you for all of your knowledge and for including me in this conversation that you guys are so eloquently having day in, day out.
Well, and very specifically, thank you for being an influencer and a celebrity who has a conversation. We've been trying to find who they are because historically there haven't been that many.
Which is, to me, is like inexcusable.
To be honest.
It's not, first of all, I think the word brand, like having a brand as a person, is such a weird idea.
Weird.
It's such a weird idea in the first place. And second of all, like how would being a part of this conversation ruin any kind of brand that you are?
Right. Like, I mean, it's cool to see that they're on board now, but like we've been trying to find people to have conversations with that could like, you know, use their platform and get the word out more. Haven't been so many. So thank you for being, to be honest, like one of the few.
Wow, that's so surprising. Well, I'm with you, and I always will be, and thanks for bearing with me while I am still stumbling through this. You know, happily so though.
Yeah. Well, reach out anytime you have any questions.
Thank you. I will.
Okay.
Mwah. That was so great.
I know. All right, girl. Have a beautiful evening with you and your husband and your baby boy. And
you too. You too. Enjoy being. You said you're with your man in Texas?
In Texas, yeah.
Well, go get some love.
I'm going to. It's his birthday tomorrow, so I will.
All right.
I'll talk to you later.
All right.
Bye.
That was oh my gosh, that was a long talk. That did not even feel like it was an hour and a half. So I guess I did my first line. And that was a great conversation. she's fucking awesome. All right, bye guys.